And welcome back to our Holy Face series. Today we're here with Pat Enk. Pat, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Gene.
and we'll start it off with a prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Ghost. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Amen.
Father, Son, the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Awesome.
Okay, we're real excited to hear from you today. We have the resurrected, the transfigured Christ up there on the screen on the first
That's right.
Friday and the Feast of the Transfiguration.
That's right.
You can take it away.
This is a feast of the Holy Face too, this Feast of the Transfiguration, because his face glowed like the sun. It was brighter than the sun. So I'm just going to go through some pictures so you can look at them and it'll remind me of what I wanted to say too. So I'll hustle along here. So I watched the other videos you had, which were wonderful. And I wanted to go first to Sister Marie St. Pierre, not to repeat everything, but to kind of put this, since we're going to talk about the history, put it in the context. Okay, and also address a couple things that there were questions brought up when I talked to David. So I want to address that too. So Sister Marie St. Pierre, the Carmelite nun who received the revelations of the Holy Face, and I love her. I think she's a saint. I don't know how she cannot be a saint, but and maybe she will be one day. I expect she will. So she was not the first Carmelite or even the first person to receive this revelation pertaining to reparation for blasphemy. So the first Carmelite nun was actually before her in a different town in France and in a different monastery. She was Mother Adelaide. And Mother Adelaide had communications with our Lord where he asked for reparations for blasphemy through devotion to his holy face. Her bishop approved that. She was very saintly and humble Carmelite nun. She had a prayer, which were reparations for blasphemy, and the bishop published that in 1819. So that is the same prayer that fell out of a book, which the Sister Marie St. Pierre's superior had taken down from a shelf when she was asking, Sister Marie St. Pierre was there to ask her, please, to approve this devotion, please allow it to go forward, because our Lord was asking her again and again to do that. And as she took down this book from the shelf, her superior, this prayer of Sister Adelaide from 1819 fell out. So where we were is Sister Adelaide had the prayer approved by her bishop in 1819. Go to Sister Marie St. Pierre in the monastery trying to get it approved, and this same prayer falls from a book. They don't even know how it got there. And so her superior tells Sister Marie St. Pierre, if I didn't know better, I would think you were a witch, because how would this happen and where did this come from? So they tried to find out, where the origin of the prayers are, and they contact the bishop there and they find out. So moving on forward from Sister Adelaide. Sister Adelaide dies, and 23 days later, not years, 23 days after Sister Adelaide dies, that's when Sister Marie St. Pierre enters the monastery in Tours. So now I want to forward ahead a little bit to the document of the brief approving the Archconfraternity of the Holy Face by Leo XIII. So this is issued in, what is the year? So I think it's like 1884, something like that. So the brief is issued. Some questions arise and concerns because, and I'll get into that, but I'm going to just read a couple quotes from the document the first document, there were two issued. So it says, hang on. So they just wanted to clarify what was the purpose of this devotion, what is permitted and what is not permitted. Because at that time, the priests who were known as the priests of the Holy Face, who were taking care of the shrine there in Leo Dupont's home. So this is after the death of Sister Marie St. Pierre and Leo Dupont. They started certain practices, and there was concerns about them. So they wanted to make sure that they were clear on some things. So that's what I want to go through, because it kind of touches on what we're going to talk about. So I got to turn on a light. Hang on. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Cut that out. So here's what they say. Whereas the Sacred Congregation of the Holy Office, so they're replying here, the Holy See, in using the title Holy Face in the brief in 1884, in which special indulgences were conceded to the confraternity erected in Tours under the title. Okay. And it was elevated to the rank of an archconfraternity. He said, by no means is this intended to approve, much less or to favor directly or indirectly, a special and distinct cult to be given to the Redeemer's adorable face, such as proposed and propagated by the priests called of the Holy Face. Instead, the Holy See is merely intended to favor the veneration paid from ancient times to the image of the face of the divine Redeemer, or to copies of this image, so that the faithful in venerating and contemplating that image may preserve even more vividly the memory of the divine Redeemer's sufferings, and may also at the same time be stirred to sorrow for their sins and moved with desire to repair the injuries to which he was subjected. Then they say, they make a couple of points. I'm trying to sum up, but he said, hence, they make a distinction between the worship given to other things pertaining to God and to God himself, which is dulia, hyperdulia, and latria. So they say, hence, the cult of latria being directed relatively to the prototype of the same image. So there is a prototype of the image. And that is to say, the divine humanity of Christ. The object of the devotion is twofold. The first is to revive in the minds of the faithful, while venerating and contemplating the sacred passion, the memory of Christ's passion. Second, to feel in the heart sorrow for sins committed, and to have a strong desire to repair the injuries done to the divine majesty. And then the second document states, so they want to make sure that it's not just a cult of a particular face, but it is directed at all faces, images of Jesus Christ, which is directed toward the prototype, the proto-image, and toward the sacred humanity of Christ. And then they'll state it again, because there was a stigmatist that was stationed at a small chapel where there was a Verona image of the Holy Face. And there were several that applied to several churches that already had very ancient images of the Holy Face. And they were looking for further clarification and to make sure that, it was still okay. So this is how the Holy Office replied in an affirmative. And they said it is not forbidden. Okay. He said but provided there is no special distinct cult of one particular face. So it all appertains, it said all appertains to the sacred humanity of our Lord Jesus Christ, is worthy of worship, not of dulia nor hyperdulia, but latria, that is given to God himself, because his humanity happens to be hypostatically united with the divinity and exacts divine worship. So then they say the tradition of the church, basically from antiquity, has always venerated the sacred images, the Redeemer's face, and the contemplation of which the faithful themselves are moved by the passion of Christ and moved to repair for offenses committed against him. Okay. And then they mention specifically as an example of this, they say, when it comes to discuss the worship of the Holy Face, the Holy See does not deny worship ought to be offered to the Holy Face of Jesus. On the contrary, this cult is practiced, as we show in ancient and the same church in the celebrated sanctuaries of Lucca, where they had a crucifix with a miraculous Holy Face, and Manopello in Italy, which I'm going to bring up later, and in many altars dedicated to the sacred face of Jesus all over the world. It said the real significance of the cult of the Holy Face, therefore, is in order that the faithful, in venerating, contemplating the sacred effigy, may cherish more vividly the memory of the divine Redeemer's suffering and feel themselves moved to sorrow and repentance and desire to make reparations. So they state that 3 times. They want to make it clear. So it's not just one face, because this devotion existed from antiquity, even though there might be a special emphasis on a particular devotion, it is still the same devotion, and other images to use, as long as it moves your heart to compassion, you're contemplating the passion of Jesus, it's all okay, because it's all our Lord's face, and the worship is directly to our Lord. So that was the one thing I wanted to bring up about that, because that question came up, and that's from the Documents of the Holy Face by Father Stefano Pedica. So with that, I'm going to get to the history. So now that we know, okay, these images are okay, I'm going to go back to the history of the Holy Face, and I'm going to start actually with Veronica, and then I'm going to back out, but just with what Pope John Paul II said about Veronica, because it's very important. Even when he was just Cardinal Karl Wojtyla, he wasn't the Pope. He used the theme of Veronica. This is something he thought about very deeply. This was on his mind, and he was the one who dedicated the millennium to the face of Christ. So he's thought about this throughout his priesthood. And he wrote poetry. It's also, that theme is in the play, The Jewel Box, which this contemplating of the face of Christ, searching for the face of Christ, becoming the image of the face of, being transformed into the image of the face of Christ ourselves. So in his poem, and I'm not going to read the whole poem, Veronica, he says to Veronica, so he's speaking to her, and he asks her the question, who are you? And, what is your name? And he, at the end, he says, your name was born from what you gazed upon. So the image of Saint Veronica didn't come out till the around the late 1180, 1190, and the 1200s. I think that's when the first mention of Veronica happens. Oops, now I knew I'd do that. I'll get back to pictures. So this is the image that was made from the Epiphany miracle in the Vatican. This image that Epiphany miracle didn't happen until after Sister Marie St. Pierre died. But this was said to be the image of the face of our Savior, and it was well documented. Many witnesses and artists were brought in. There are various images. This just happened to be my favorite one. So, but here's what John Paul said to say. This is what else he had to say about the Veronica, and we'll look at this one for the moment. So he says, Veronica does not appear in the Gospels. Her name is not mentioned, even though the names of other women who accompanied Jesus do appear. It is possible, therefore, that the name refers more to what the woman did. In fact, according to tradition, on the road to Calvary, a woman pushed her way through the soldiers, escorting Jesus with a veil, and wiped the sweat and blood from our Lord's face. That face remained imprinted on the veil, a faithful reflection, a true icon. This would be the reason for the name Veronica, true icon. If this is so, the name, which evokes the memory of what this woman did, carries with it the deepest truth about her. One day, Jesus drew the criticism of onlookers when he defended a sinful woman who had poured perfumed oil on his feet and dried them with her hair. To those who objected, he replied, "Why do you trouble this woman? For she has done a beautiful thing to me. In pouring the ointment on my body, she has done it to prepare me for burial." These words could likewise be applied to Veronica. Thus, we see the profound eloquence of this event. The Redeemer of the world presents Veronica with an authentic image of his face. The veil upon which the face of Christ remains imprinted becomes a message for us. In a certain sense, it says, this is how every act of goodness, every gesture of true love toward one's neighbor strengthens the likeness of the Redeemer of the world in the one who acts this way. Acts of love do not pass away. Every act of goodness, of understanding, of service leaves on people's hearts an indelible imprint and makes us even more like the one who emptied himself, taking the form of a servant. This is what shapes our identity and our true name. So the deep meaning and the call for every Christian is revealed in the presence of this unknown woman called Veronica through this act of charity and compassion, which leaves the imprint of the face of Jesus in our souls. So this is what happens when we perform these acts of compassion and charity. He transforms us into his own image. So then we'll begin with the 4 stories, one face. So this is one image, and there has, mamma mia, I gotta go back. I have to be careful what I touch. One back. Okay, so one thing at a time. So there was various stories, legends. You go back to the beginning, it's like the game of telephone. Nobody knows what the original story is because it gets changed so much. But there are some historical accounts of a veil, a cloth of miraculous origin, not made by human hands, bearing the image of the face of Christ. Each account relates in its own way that the sacred image came into contact with the living face of Christ. Human nature, being what it is, has altered that story. We've journeyed through millennia of dangers, persecution, wars, and intrigue since Christ walked on earth and on water, which obscured the facts of the original veil of Jesus. The story of the veil were handed down to us by way of history, tradition, literature, art, and music. Somewhere within these intertwined are the truth, but one must have the humility to acknowledge before such a great mystery that we don't know the whole story, because God, whose ways are not our ways, allowed them to be hidden. There are many clues, though, as to what the Holy Face looked like. And that's what we're going to look at through art history. So The Holy Face has taken a prominent role in this point of history. And that's why it's so important to go back and look at the whole picture, because it's like a mosaic. It's not just one face, but it's just one particular aspect of the devotion, but it is like a mosaic making up the entire face of Christ and his sacred humanity presented to us. So to begin, each of these images depict a face of Jesus. And here we see in this picture, this is Joseph of Arimathea and St. John, and they're at the point of burying Jesus. And if you look very closely, I'll see if I can zoom it. There is just a hint of this veil that is transparent being placed on the face of Christ in death. So one of the most important aspects or characteristics of the veil is that it is transparent. So let me see if I can go to the next one. We look at a face now that we see from art, and we can say this is the face of Jesus. Why is this the face of Jesus? All these different images that we recognize so readily. It's because there was one prototype. There was one that started it all. These are some of the earliest images of the face of Christ, and I'll show you others, but we know the Shroud of Turin. The one on the bottom is the veil of Manopello. The Shroud of Turin and the veil of Manopello would be considered archeropoeta. It's a Greek word meaning not made by human hands, but by the hand of God. So we'll get back to that. This is just an early image. These are all very early pictures, maybe we're familiar with or not, of the face of Christ. Iconography is very interesting because it is very specific in depicting the face of Christ. They have very strict rules about it's done in a very precise manner. And that is, so we can do it.
There we go, we're still good.
So icons are done in a very precise manner, and the earliest images were mostly icons in the Eastern Church. And this is just one example of what they look like. So you see the characteristics there. The veil is present. There is a veil present. There is the hair parted in the middle. You see the eyes looking to one side and this little tuft of hair that's at the top of his forehead. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. But it's a clue. It's a clue that you look for. It occurs, and we see the beard divided in two, and it's a sparse beard. So the next one, here's another example of, this is Russian icon. Same thing. The eyes are looking to one side, this little tuft of hair. So this is how we identify some of these icons. So I want to go, this was not the image I wanted to see. Wait a minute. I wanted to find the image of Edessa. Oh, something, I lost it. Oh, the very thing I wanted to show you. I can't, Jean, I'm sorry. So the image of Edessa. So the face of Christ was the face of a living Christ on a sheer veil or cloth, a human face of a man who suffered, and there were traces of wounds, bruises, swelling visible, especially on the left cheek. His wavy hair was long and parted, with a small lock of curls at the center. His beard is sparse and divided in two. His open eyes are peaceful and looking slightly to the side. Often you see his mouth partially opened, and this becomes significant when you're looking for the proto image. The images were reported to have had were miraculous not only in appearance, but as an instrument of healing. So let me go back just a second because I want to find an image called the Edessa. Okay, I'm going to zoom because I can't find the individual picture. But if you look, can you see where the arrow is pointing? This would be considered the image of Edessa. It looks like a kind of smudgy brownish with a beard divide, you know, the hair and the beard, the 3 points at the bottom, and it looks rather dark. But the first image, the Camulia, which originated in the town of Camuliana in Cappadocia, Turkey. This is the first story we have about the Holy Face. And the story goes like this. So it is said the Camuliana looked rather like this. So the story is about a woman named Hypatia who was receiving Christian instruction and had difficulty believing in Jesus unless she could see him. How can I worship him when he is not visible and I cannot see him, she asked. One day she drew water from a well, and a cloth with his holy face came out of the well, and she became a believer from that moment on. So you think about back in the days during wars or different things, people would hide their valuables in a well. So this may have some merit. Someone might have hidden it there, which tells you it must also be somewhat waterproof. But it says, although there are no longer any trace in art history of the Camulia, the image is described by an ancient historian. I won't try to tackle the name right now. He said the image of God, it was the image of God incarnate, since ancient times into the present day, that divine art created it, and it was not produced either by a weaver's hand or painted in the colors of a painter. So this Camulia veil was cited as a historical image during the Iconoclast War of sacred images during the Second Council of Nicaea in 787. A deacon named Cosmos demonstrated how iconoclasts wanted to destroy evidence of the testimony of the Eastern Fathers in favor of images of the face of Jesus. And he held up a martyrology from which the pages about the Camulia had been ripped out. And that is the last mention of the Camulia in history. So now the Mandylion of Edessa, that is our next story. So let me go forward, see if I can find it. It helps to have pictures, but then I have to do it right. Okay. So let me see if I can get to the correct. Nope, I have to go back. Apparently some pictures I put in this album are missing. I'm so sorry. So this is showing another story, but it doesn't matter because the illustrations were done much later than the story surfaced, you know, by hundreds and hundreds of years. So the Camulia, the evidence of it, the pictures of it were destroyed. Okay. St. John Damascene comes on the scene and he defends having images of the face of Christ. Okay, he said, does anyone who has divine knowledge and spiritual understanding not recognize that iconoclasm is the ruse of the devil? For he does not want his defeat and shame to spread around, nor the glory of God and the saints recorded. So iconoclasm means image breaking. It's a heresy which maintained that the veneration of religious images was unlawful. It has been disputed as to whether it began under Muslim influence, which regarded all representations of the human form to be abominable idol, or as some historians believe, whether it came about for political reasons. A resurgence of iconoclasm among radical Muslims today is in fact prevalent, as is evidenced by statues and holy images that have been destroyed in churches across the face of the globe. However, there are also some Christians even today who believe that venerating images is idolatry. Iconoclasm was condemned as unfaithful to the Christian tradition at the Second Council of Nicaea in 787. Iconoclast persecution was raising in the 8th century, and though iconoclasts destroyed images and tore evidence of the holy face of the Camulia from holy books, there were also early church fathers who opposed iconoclasm, like St. John Damascene, a doctor of the church, who wrote many strong works defending the use of such images. So I'll hold this up since I can't find the picture on my thing. But this is, can you see it, Jean? Can you see this okay? Give me a thumbs up. So this is the image. This is a later painting of this image of Edessa. And you see the veil. Okay. So I just wanted to show you, if I can find it later, I'll put it up for you because somehow it got scrambled in my images. So the Edessa is another image said to be not made by human hands of the face of Jesus and was mentioned many times by the council. It was known as the Mandylion of Edessa. And we'll go back to the Mandylion picture that I do have, which is up here. So, whoops. So this one at the top that the pointer is on would be a copy of what the Edessa looked like. So you can see. Okay. So it is said St. John Damascene actually wrote this regarding the Mandylion, which is another name for this image of Edessa. So you've probably heard that name, Mandylion, before. It is said that King Abgarus of Edessa sent a painter to make a portrait of Christ, but he was not able to do it because of the light that shone out of the Lord's face. So taking a veil and placing it before his holy and life-giving face, Jesus impressed his image on it and sent it to King Abgarus, thus satisfying his desire. So often you see St. Jude Thaddeus as holding an icon of the image of Jesus in front of him. This is another story according to tradition. I love those words, according to tradition. There are several traditions. The poor king suffered from leprosy and gout, and upon hearing the miracles of Jesus, he sent a letter to Jesus by his secretary, Ananias, who also happened to be a wonderful painter that was mentioned above. So it was St. Jude Thaddeus who brought the holy veil to the king. After hearing St. Jude Thaddeus preached and receiving the holy image, the king was healed. It was King Abgarus who brought Christianity to his kingdom, and he is venerated in the Eastern Church even today. Reference to the holy face of Edessa has been found in historical sources dating back to 590. The Arab sources also mention a cloth on which Jesus imprinted the image of his face. There's been disagreement over the centuries as to the question of how the living image of Jesus was formed on the cloth. Everyone agreed that it was indeed miraculous, no matter how it was formed. Some said it was formed by Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Some tell these other stories, but they just say it is miraculous. They didn't know the exact origin. So one other thing that's interesting about the Edessa image is that it was, even though the image we normally associate with Sister Marie St. Pierre, which is the drawings of the Epiphany miracle, face of Christ, the image that they had in their monastery when she lived there was said to be a beautiful copy from Spain of this Edessa image. So there is a reference. Oh, wait a minute. Let me go back. So many reproductions were made of this image of Edessa. Hang on. I'm sorry. No. So I thought that was you calling me. So I'll start again. Many reproductions were made of this image of Edessa, some appearing miraculously on tile. So if we go through these images once again, I'll try once more. I have to cut these out. See if I can get to the tile. So these are more images of Edessa, and that's what I was looking for, but I'll get back to that later. So see if I can find the tiles. Okay, I'll find the tiles later. So sorry. All right. Okay, so many reproductions were made, some appearing miraculously on tile that had covered the sacred cloth. They're usually shown as two tiles, a mirror image of each other, because one touched one side, one touched the other. So this again reinforced the idea that the image was a two-sided transparent cloth. It is two sides, each looking different. So the eyes on one, I said they'd be turned to the side, and the little tuft of hair turned to the side. On one image, it's turned to one side and the eyes look to the right. On the other side, it looks to the left and the little tuft goes to the left. So the Mandylion was eventually brought to Constantinople on August 16th, 944, which is still celebrated as a feast day in the Eastern calendar. It was recorded as being kept in a golden vessel and only taken out once a year from the sacred chapel, where other precious relics of the Passion were also kept until the sack of Constantinople in 1204. There were many who believed that the image of Edessa was possibly the Shroud of Turin, folded in four. Others believed that it might have been the Camulia. The faint image was difficult to see on the Shroud of Turin, and it was not the face of a living man. So it couldn't have been the Shroud of Turin because it didn't show this face of a living man, which could not be seen clearly until 1898 when it was first photographed. So there's actually a story about Saint Therese and her sister Celine, which actually happened after Therese died. Celine, this photograph of the holy face of the Shroud of Turin, which you see behind me, everybody knows that, I think, now could be seen by the world. And Celine was looking at this and contemplating his face, and she heard Saint Therese say to her, paint him as he truly is. And Celine was startled by that, and she thought, okay, I'll do that. And so she did a drawing, a special drawing. She had had art lessons that Saint Therese was denied, but she did a drawing of the Holy Face from the Shroud of Turin, and they entered it in a competition, and she actually won the silver medal for her drawing of the face of the Shroud of Turin. This also reinforces the fact that, well, right, that image didn't exist when Saint Therese was alive, but yes, this is also a good image to contemplate the suffering and passion of Jesus. So in attempting these intricate tangles of history, we have to look at the references to earliest icons derived from a common source or a proto-image. So one of the earliest icons, I'll go back. We we can have pictures, but you know, I'm so sorry that this is not working as I planned. But this is one of the earliest image, Christ Pantocrator here. And that was, that's at St. Catherine's Monastery in Sinai. It was done in the 6th or 7th century. But it portrays the face of Christ. There's several versions of this icon since then, each apparently striving to be faithful to a specific proto-image, an image referred to as this acheropoeta. The prototype is not made by human hands. Often icons also depict the unique and intriguing characteristic of this little tuft of hair at the center part, which becomes very important in discovering this proto-image. So what happened to the Camulia veil? Before disappearing from the radar, historians in the iconoclast period, during the persecution, so that it was going on, they had been ordered by Emperor Justinian to be brought to Constantinople. So we're going to start again, but I wanted to touch back to Sister Marie St. Pierre because I left out something very important, and that is her, in her communications with Jesus, he told her that charity is the essence of the Holy Face devotion. And it cannot be overstated that Saint Therese, who came after Sister Marie St. Pierre, and Sister Marie St. Pierre's life had such a profound influence on Saint Therese that Saint Therese's spiritual doctrine of the little way, doing all things with great love, she got from Sister Marie St. Pierre, because the essence of this devotion is charity. So that's what Jesus told her. I also wanted to bring up, because this raises something else. So when Saint Therese was going to be canonized, of course, they're examining every part of her life and her devotions. What did her devotion consist of, if you say devotion to the Holy Face? And after the concerns that I mentioned in the beginning, where Pope Leo the Great, not Pope Leo the 13th, I get my Leos mixed up, Leo the 13th, after he established the Archconfraternity, and then the documents that were addressing concerns. They wanted to know what, her whole family, Therese's whole family was members of the Archconfraternity of the Holy Face. But what did her devotion consist of? Was it narrow? Was it what they called, in the documents, was it, what did they say? And a separate and distinct cult? That was the concern. So we already talked about that, but her sister, Celine, who was actually, she was another Carmelite nun with Saint Therese, but she was, her name in Carmel was Genevieve of the Holy Face, which another Holy Face saint. And Celine was the one who did the picture from the Shroud of Turin that won the silver medal. So this is what Celine wrote, clarifying this about Saint Therese's own devotion. She says, devotion to the Holy Face was for Therese the crowning complement of her love for the sacred humanity of our Lord. That was the concern of Leo, of the Holy Office. It must be directed, all these images, you're directing it toward the sacred humanity of our Lord. He said, the blessed face was the mirror wherein she beheld the heart and soul of her well-beloved. Just as the picture of a loved one serves to bring the whole person before us, so in the Holy Face of Christ, Therese beheld the entire humanity of Jesus. We can say unequivocally that this devotion was the burning inspiration of the saint's life. Her devotion to the Holy Face transcended or miraculously embraced all other attractions of her spiritual life. So that's beautiful. And I think they went, okay, that's the right kind of devotion to have to the Holy Face. They're checking, they're making sure. So now we'll move on to where we left off, which was Justinian, the Emperor Justinian. So let me go real quick. Oh, there's Saint Therese, and there's her picture of the Holy Face that she had. Okay, see if I can not mess this up. And that's my favorite there. This is Celine's pic, actually the picture she drew from the Shroud of Turin that won the medal. Beautiful. This again was the image of Edessa. So after the Camulia, there was the Edessa, and the Camulia veil, which this may have been the same veil, most likely it was, had been ordered by Emperor Justinian to be brought to Constantinople. The veil was sometimes, that's King Abgar, that was the painting, one I was missing the other day. The veil was sometimes carried as a standard in battle by the emperor, and it was for the most part hidden away and taken out once a year for the emperor's eyes only, but only after he had gone to confession and received communion. Justinian's reign was turbulent, however, and the wise patriarch of Constantinople, Callinicos, who was later blinded by Justinian, one hopes Justinian went back to confession, entrusted the veil to the hands of a Greek man. So it went from Constantinople, they had it sealed up in the wall of Constantinople. That's probably Callinicos, the bishop. And then it was brought to Rome by a Greek man. This Greek man became Pope John VII. And the new Pope built a chapel in St. Peter's known as the Veronica Chapel. So, 1 second. Got to get my little self in order. Okay. So the Veronica, although historians are still uncertain as to how the veil came to Rome, that could be one of the ways it came. There is an interesting fresco in the grottos beneath St. Peter's Basilica. The fresco was commissioned in 1608 by Paul V in the area near the tomb of St. Peter. It was to preserve the memory of monuments of the old basilica that had been demolished 12 years earlier. Among the frescoes in the oratory, dated 708 of Pope John VII, it protected a small shrine, and this is the small shrine called the Sacellum, containing the Holy Veil, which by some accounts was brought by John VII from Rome to Constantinople. The inscription reads, I'm not going to attempt the Latin, but I'll give you the translation. The oratory of the Holy Sudarium, Veronica, and the Virgin Mother of God, built by John VII. Okay. The Latin word Veronique in the inscription means true image. The word sudarium in Latin is sweat cloth or face cloth to be placed on the face at burial. And it is specifically used to refer to two cloths that are associated with the Passion of Jesus. One is, I'm going to go a little forward and then I'll go back. The Oviedo. This was the cloth used to soak up the blood on the face of Jesus. And if you can see me move my little cursor, these two darkest spots that you see would be where the blood came out of the nose. So it's being held on his face. The mouth would have been in this area. And I can't see exactly where it is on this image because it's all spread out. It, would have been different when they're trying to staunch the blood as they take him down from the cross, because blood is sacred to the Jews. They would have to do that first. And there is a handprint on it. Whose hand, I wonder, could it be the Blessed Virgin's? Yeah, whose was it? So back to the little Seychellum, the top of it is where the relics were kept. This central area here shows a woman holding the veil, and we'll skip over to the other one. The lower area was the altar where priests could come and offer masses there. So this is because it's dedicated to the Blessed Virgin. So this is not Veronica on this. This is the Blessed Mother. Okay, and back. So the Veronica was the name given to the veil itself, but several legends sprang up about a woman named Veronica, associated with a woman named Bernice, the bleeding woman who touches the hem of Jesus' garment in the gospel. Some people think that Bernice, who was mentioned first in the Acts of Pilate, the Greek name Berenike sounds a little similar to Veronica, and they thought possibly it was some sort of alliteration, but who knows. But we don't actually hear the name Veronica mentioned. It doesn't change from Bernice. It starts out as Bernice in the Acts of Pilate, and between the 5th and 6th century somehow becomes Veronica. I don't want to take too long to tell you all the stories that go with it, because there's all these little stories in between, but I'll keep on. So finally, this name somewhere along the line becomes Veronica. And the oldest legend tells the tale of the legend of Edessa, the cure of Tiberius. So you got to go past this. This is showing the cure of Tiberius. And the illustrations for the Acts of Pilate, actually I have to explain, the Acts of Pilate, or the Gospel of Nicodemus, was written, some believe, as a response to some heresy that was going on. So they had these characters from Christ's passion speak as though giving their testimony before Pilate about the passion. And Bernice's turn comes to speak, and she starts to speak, and they say, no, she's a woman, she must go. And that's the last you see of her in the Acts of Pilate. So, and the Acts of Pilate were added on to in different languages over many years. But the oldest possible date for it would be, maybe in the 4th century. Okay, so here we have the cure of Tiberius. And so this story tells of a woman named Veronica, having painted a portrait of the Lord, was summoned from Jerusalem to Rome by Emperor Tiberius, who was cured of leprosy by touching that image. Then there is a virgin that tells of Veronica wiping the face of Jesus, written in 1191, called Joseph of Arimathea by Robert de Boron. The stories are many and varied, but legend that most people are most familiar with today is traced to a version by Roger d'Argenteuil in the 1300s. It is of Veronica, which is associated with the 6th station of the cross, the compassionate woman wiping the face of Jesus on the way to Calvary with a cloth, upon which he leaves the image of his face. So we're all the way up to 1300 before we hear this version referring to the stations of the cross. Okay. Let's see where it was. Okay. So the big question is, did Veronica really exist? So this is a very personal question for me, which I'll get to later, but it meant a lot to me that she existed, and to hear she might not have existed was very unsettling. So in the Catholic Encyclopedia, it answers this delicate question. It says, these pious traditions cannot be documented, but there is no reason why a belief that such an act of compassion did occur should not find expression in veneration paid to one called Veronica. So that's a pretty good, I'll take it. So It's saying it's okay for us to believe that if we want, even if there is no hard, fast evidence, so I'll go with that. So we'll get to, so there's other images earlier than this. This is one of the earliest images from about 781. This one was commissioned by the Emperor Constantine, and the spots on his face here that look darker were intentional because the proto image or whatever proto image he was looking at had those also some wound marks. That was also the 7th century, which we saw before Christ Pantocrator. I just like this because I like it. This is a crusader with a shield of the holy face, and he's got a cloak of Jesus, he's got a crown of thorns, he's got all the instruments of the passion on his helmet. It's just a cool picture. This is from the 1100s, and this is probably the oldest image that shows both the veil and the Shroud of Turin together for the first time. It's called the Codex Prae of Budapest. So on the top, we see these 3 men preparing Jesus for battle, for burial, not battle, for burial. And then the lower section, we see an angel pointing something out to the women who come into the tomb. And what he's pointing to and holding, I'll see if I can zoom it without losing it. This herringbone weave is characteristic of the Shroud of Turin. So we would say that is the Shroud of Turin. That is the cloth that wrapped him all around his head to his feet. But this veil that's kind of blowing in the wind, looking very light, this is kind of a medieval attempt at showing a transparent veil. So that we get to the key to the proto image is transparency, and that would most likely be the cloth that covered his head. This is a later version in the 1500s, also showing the Shroud of Turin. And actually, this is in Turin. It's commemorating the arrival of the shroud, which I believe happened in the 1200s. And it also shows up at the top of the fresco, the veil, and it has a living face on the veil. Whoops, it wants to go back, and I don't. Okay. So it was Pope Innocent III who brought the veil out of hiding. And this happened shortly after that he sent crusaders to sack Constantinople. So I don't know if there's a connection or not, but he brought the veil out of hiding by instituting a procession on the Sunday after the octave of the Epiphany. And an octave is considered like a it's the same day, really. So this is Epiphany again coming to light, these connections of the Holy Face. Epiphany, because at Epiphany, his face is manifested for the first time to the world, represented by the 3 kings. So that Sunday is dedicated to the wedding of Cana. The procession traveled from St. Peter's to Spirito Santo Hospital in Rome. Alms were given along the way, 3 denarii to the poor, which was enough to buy milk, bread, and wine. The procession was reenacted for the first time in many centuries in Rome recently, January 17th, 2016. And I have that on my blog, but we won't go back to that right now. So soon after Innocent III's procession of the Veronica veil, it became the most famous relic in Rome. Pilgrims flocked to see the Veronica, and artists created many reproductions for pilgrims. During the next 4 centuries, the ordinary pilgrims also included saints and other notable persons who came to see the Holy Face for themselves and recorded their experience. So there was poetry, music, various things. So now artists are beginning to paint this image. First, I want to take one more look at this image. So the image he carried, it's in there, it's kind of connected to something, but it's in the reliquary. This is the reliquary that was specially made for it, which we'll see later, which had two sides. It had two panes of rock crystal. And we'll get back to that later. It's a pretty image. Okay. This is St. Francis, one of the ones painted after now it's being publicly viewed and artists can see it clearly. This is St. Francis in ecstasy before the Holy Veil. And a couple things happened at the same time that and it's significant, that the Holy Veil began to be processed publicly. And that was for the next 400 years. One was St. Francis, just before then, and the Franciscans preached specifically on the Passion. They had a great devotion to the Passion. And I think it was St. Bonaventure, wrote his whole meditations on the Passion are very beautiful. So at the same time, it kind of parallels with the public veneration of the Holy Face, this rise in interest in contemplating the Passion coincides also with a greater reverence for Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament. Corpus Christi is instituted. This is a Mass of St. Gregory the Great, and you can see there's a veil there to the side of the altar that's transparent. This is by the Mass. St. Gregory had a vision. He was saying Mass when suddenly he saw all things related to the Passion. He saw Jesus and he saw this veil that was the significant elements there. The veil, this is one that David really liked. This is St. Mary Magdalene, and she's got her hand clasped together with Jesus. Oh my, I just noticed. I want to see, I think I've got the wrong one, but that's okay. We'll go with this. I think I got to go with this one. Hang on one sec. Nope. Nope, I had the right one. Okay. I had to change it a couple of times to get things where I wanted them. So this is the same picture, St. Mary Magdalene. She would have been, it said, from what we gather, she was a wealthy woman. And byssus was veils of byssus that were so light and transparent. They shimmered like gold. They were more valuable than gold. It was very difficult to weave. Only somebody with very skillful small hands could do something like that. So she has this byssus veil they're holding in their hands. It continues up around her shoulder. So one theory is this later is what becomes the sudarium of Christ, his face cloth at burial. This is a close-up of Michael Wolgamoth's Mass of St. Gregory, where you see the veil a little closer. So other pictures was many medieval manuscripts, and now they're all showing the Holy Face. This one was an illustration for Dante's Paradiso, where showing the face of God, the love that moves the sun and other stars. And then, so Dante came to Rome as a pilgrim, and he saw the Veronica veil himself, and he actually included that in several of his works. In the Divine Comedy, he wrote, a pilgrim from Croatia, far indeed, comes to set his gaze on our Veronica, and cannot fulfill so long a hunger for that food. But while the relics shone, he says in thought, and did you look like this? Was this your face, O Jesus Christ, my Lord and my very God? So, there's also the appearance. So the appearance of the face on the veil had very mysterious, changeable attributes, which are also recorded in art and writing. The veil was described as sheer, almost transparent and luminous. And while the face of Jesus was sometimes suffering or serene, in color, it was dark, like this one is, bright, it could be bluish, or even black, or golden, or it could even vanish completely. St. Gertrude the Great described the Veronica in 1289, explaining that both the darkness and the brightness of the Veronica was related to the passion and resurrection of Jesus, as well as the fact that Christ was both human and divine. St. Julian of Norwich wrote of the Holy Veil in Rome, quote, which he hath portrayed with his own blessed face when he was in his hard passion, with steadfast will going to his death, and often changing in color, diverse changing of color and countenance, and sometimes more comfortably and lifelike, sometimes more ruefully and deathlike. This testimony was even more surprising. It was by Martin Luther. He came to Rome and gave a rather incredulous description of the Veronica veil, which he saw, or rather didn't see, on his visit to Rome in 1511. He wrote to a friend, "It is simply a square black board on which a transparent piece of cloth hangs, and above this is another veil." So we're thinking two veils there. One is completely transparent. What is the other veil? We don't know. But it's interesting. So then he says, there, poor Jena Hans cannot have seen anything more than a transparent cloth that covers a black board. This is the Veronica that is shown, he says. So he's trying to debunk the Veronica, saying this is a scam, there is nothing there. But the fact is that it appeared those different ways. It had those characteristics of changeability, that the face would come and go. It would change in color. It also had, if you look at this painting, this transparent veil, it has these 4 distinct folds, vertically and also horizontally. And that comes up later. See,
that would make sense that Martin Luther would deny that, because since it's not directly in the Bible, he has an agenda to debunk tradition. So he's not going by the fact that she's a canonized saint. She's in the mass.
Actually, Veronica's not a canonized saint. So Saint Veronica was removed from the martyrology by Saint Charles Borromeo. And because of the reason, they found no evidence of her until these legends. All they had were legends. So they did the same to Saint Christopher. So that happened. A lot of people bring it up, but it was after. So I'm a child of, pre-Vatican II, of course. So yes. After a lot of these things, no, this is removed, this is removed, this is removed. So.
Yeah, so it was more of a modernist ploy to get rid of her.
Well, I don't know. Charles Borromeo wasn't a modernist. He removed her first, but I think, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah, so it's okay, because the church says it doesn't matter. We can still, and it makes sense to me that a woman of compassion, she would have performed an act of compassion for Jesus. Somebody would have. On the way to the
cross. The Stations of the Cross have been around forever, right?
No. So actually the Stations of the Cross and the Stations of the Cross that are in Jerusalem, now maybe there was a tradition, but there isn't a record of it until somewhere after St. Francis in his preaching on the Passion, when the Franciscans they were in charge of many of the sites in the Holy Land. And it actually comes up for the first time in the Holy Land, I know, in the 1300s. So the house that is marked as Veronica's house at the Stations of the Cross, they just chose that house to be, and I don't know how they chose it, but they chose that to be that station. So that didn't come till around the 1300s.
So it would seem that this would fall probably, the theological notes. This would probably be like, obviously it's not dogma, but a level 5, which would be common opinion, which to my understanding, it's still binding on the faithful. At least it would actually be at least venially sinful to deny, but it could possibly even be gravely if it's common.
It's one of those little T traditions. So yeah, it's a little T.
But more than an opinion.
I don't think somebody is committing a sin to be skeptical or have doubts, or maybe even not. But also the church says you can believe it, so it's okay. So it doesn't, that part, it's a little T, and it's a good thing, because it's very, the example of Veronica, and for whatever reason, it came about through the providence of God, is very important for us. This is teaching us something very important. So this is the act of charity, the essence of the devotion being shown, personified in a person. So who we call Veronica. So, okay, we talked about Martin Luther, I'm sorry. So then, okay, so there's this explosion of artwork, and I'll go through them pretty fast. I won't talk about each one. That's another, this one is a tapestry of the Mass of St. Gregory the Great. This one I just love. It's from a medieval manuscript. It's the Blessed Virgin Mary and Veronica, and she's holding the veil. It's sweet. And this is a crucifixion with Veronica, and it's kind of, can you find it? It's over here in the left. Can you see it? I'll go a little bigger.
Oh yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another, it's on the left.
Oh wow.
It's showing Jesus carrying the cross.
Right.
That one's from Scotland. This one is Bosch, and oh wow, the figures in this. But here's Veronica, and if you look in the left corner, there's Jesus on the veil peeping up right here.
And what years are these taken? Or not?
This one, let's see, the Bosch is, the little thing that's showing me, but is covered up by the screen sharing thing. I can't get rid of it or I'll end up closing us. But they're all between, all these that I'm showing you are between that period where the veil was exhibited. So that 400-year period between 1206 and, around 1527. And we'll get to 1527 was a big year for Rome. So there's another Veronica. They're beautiful. This is Hans Memling. I love that one. Now, sometimes you see the veil as being white and not transparent, and sometimes it does appear white, not just transparent. This is actually, though, the oldest image of Veronica, and this is at the Church of Santa Veronica in Lecco, Italy, and this is in 1208. So that's almost right after it was being processed. And you look at the face on this, it has those characteristics we spoke of earlier. The eyes are looking slightly to the side. We have that little lock, hair parted in the middle, sparse beard, divided into kind of the wavy hair. So those are all the characteristics. And this is a very early one, the earliest that I think exists. That's a beautiful one that's in the Getty Museum in California. This Veronica also is showing the transparent veil, and the face is not quite so dark as on the other one, but it is a living face. You can see it's almost like a three-dimensional face there. So this is what some of these artists saw. Everyone's painting it maybe slightly differently because they all saw something different. And on books, it's in books, manuscripts, and poems and songs were written about it. at this time. So this is the full image of the Veronica I showed you earlier. She's holding it out, and there's again,
what's the oldest icon of Veronica's veil?
the one I showed you.
Oh yeah, okay.
This one back here, the one in Lecco, Italy, at Santa Veronica Chapel. This one is by Albert Dürer, and the Michael Wolgamut, who painted the Mass of St. Gregory, where you see that little transparent veil to the side and all the altar linens and the Passion. Dürer was his student, so he also painted Jesus. This one's beautiful. This is in the cathedral at Frankfurt, Germany. Again, looking to the side, you see the little lock turning one way. His eyes are looking the same direction as the hair turns. And all the little characteristics are there. So it was in statues, altarpieces. So it's everywhere, and pilgrims are coming from everywhere. And this is what, this is Fra Angelico. It's beautiful. So now we're getting closer to, this one's around 1300, but we're getting a little closer to when they don't show it publicly anymore. So this one is something like 1508, I believe. I can't see it in the top there, but I think this one is 1508. This one was also like 1510. This one was in the Carmelite Monastery in Toledo, Spain, and St. Teresa of Avila had her conversion experience before this image. And this one is the last one I'm going to show you that's in closest proximity to when the public viewing disappeared, it stopped. So this is by Quentin Metzis, and you've probably seen this on book covers and things. It's a beautiful painting, but by this time, by the 1500s now, people have had a good look many times, and this is what the veil looked like to them, the face in the veil. And then something happens. So in 1506, so go back just a second, we'll look at the Metzis one. In 1506, the Pope Julius II, this is the Pope that harangued Michelangelo to complete the Sistine Chapel. He began a great renovation of St. Peter's Basilica, including the construction of a magnificent Veronica pillar, which was to contain the precious veil. So all the people are coming to see it. They're going to build a suitable reliquary for it, making this huge Veronica pillar. It's in the works. So things are being taken down and construction's going on. So in 1527, though, Rome was sacked by mercenary troops of Charles V. Within 8 days, homes, palaces, churches were looted, pillaged, and destroyed, including the Vatican. As in all times of crisis, the rumors flew. It was feared the Veronica had been stolen. And this is the reliquary that was for the veil that was processed. It had a rock crystal, the largest example of rock crystal in the world, on 2 sides. And it's right there in the Vatican Museum for all to see. So the destruction was pretty awful. So it was feared the Veronica had been stolen. A letter was written to the Duchess of Urbina by her representative Urban, dated May 21st, 1527, and it reads, "Holy relics have been thrown out into the streets. The Veronica has been stolen and passed around in taverns from person to person without a word of protest." So now what has happened to the Veronica? Well, they started, it was a long time before things got back to normal enough that they could do anything about seeing what happened, what was there, what relics were there, what relics were not, because many relics were stolen and destroyed, and there was all kinds of destruction. The last chronicle of an ostentation at Old St. Peter's Basilica said this, and this is around early 1600s, so around 1606, something like that. In the days the Veronica is being shown, because sometimes they would just take it out for a moment and then they'd put it back, but they said, in the days the Veronica is being showed, it is emaciated, dark, gloomy in color, in a square as big as a mirror. It is displayed with great solemnity from a high pulpit. So it's up where it can't be seen too well. It seems like a smaller proportion than what they saw before. So people are kind of losing interest in the Veronica. But people, royalty and important persons, would still petition the Pope or ask, we would like to send a representative to paint the Veronica. May we view the Veronica, may we obtain a painting of the Veronica. So in 1606, around that same time, because of the work on St. Peter's Basilica, the Veronica was transferred to an iron cask in the archive. And Pope Paul V asked Giacomo Grimaldi to collect all possible relics. He did, and other major relics, and make an inventory, because he didn't want to lose anything while the construction was going on. So an inventory was made. So this is the inventory Grimaldi made, and it has an altered date of, for some reason, we don't know why, it's just interesting to note, of 1618, it looks like. So he shows on it the face that he knew that everybody had seen, and looks like a living face. All the characteristics are there. But then something happened. So Queen Constance of Poland had sent a representative to petition the Pope, ask the Pope, I would like to see the Veronica, I would like to have a copy painted. And the Pope waits about a year before he responds. He waits another year before he responds. So that was 1615. And then in 1616, an artist is finally chosen. He apologized letter to her in a letter saying, I'm sorry it's so late, but we couldn't find one of the canons who can paint well enough. So the canons were the only ones who could handle the Veronica. So he finally chose Pietro Strozzi. And this is what Pietro Strozzi's, in the meantime, what Pietro Strozzi came up with. Now that's dramatically different from what we saw before. Later, they did an inventory, and this is Speroni did inventory. It was, I don't know, it's something like, I have to find it now. Something like 1638. It's quite a bit later, but this is the face that he paints on the new image. So Pietro Strozzi, he painted this image. He made 5 other copies, and on the same day, Pope Paul V comes to view the copies. He had already sent the copy for Queen Constance with the messenger. He was already on his way. Paul V looks at it and prohibits any more copies being made. He said, don't make any more copies. So he puts a prohibition on it. He says, no more. You know, they try to get him back. So now they're trying to, it seems as though they're trying to find the one, you know, why does it look like this? Some people have said it's possible because it is a smaller size than the face that was there, and it looks different, that many of the artists that painted things for Pilgrim painted things in a watercolor, and maybe when they discovered it was missing, somebody took one of those copies and put it in there, and it had since faded. Nobody knows for sure because nobody has gotten close enough to examine it or find out. So this copy, so he ordered that all copies, later, Urban VIII orders that all copies of the Veronica be handed in to a local priest or bishop under pain of excommunication. So the image with this death-like face is now placed in the completed Veronica altar in St. Peter's Basilica and covered with another veil. They put up a notice nearby stating that anyone who removed the veil covering the Holy Face without papal approval would be excommunicated. Pretty severe. So it was only shown from then on once a year at a distance of 20 meters. All that could be seen was a dark cloth within a frame in the shape of a face. Not surprisingly, interest in the Veronica there, and therefore the devotion to the Holy Face, soon dwindled. So Pope Urban and Pope Paul V are not the bad guys here, and neither is Pietro Strozzi. Pietro Strozzi was acting in good faith. He was painting what he saw. The popes are, it seems like they're trying to make sure what is this? You know, what was there before? Does somebody have it? Is it still out there? So we have to be careful not to ascribe any sort of malicious motive to the apparent incongruity and change of appearance, but one must be also honest in saying that the images on the opusculums, the inventories, there's Grimaldi's and Speroni's, they couldn't be more different. So what happened? It's a great mystery, which remains to be unraveled. So this is the last story of the Holy Face here. So this is first the Veronica pillar, gorgeous, by Bernini. And actually the face on her veil, if you zoomed, you could see this is on the baldacchino, the balcony that they would display it from on Good Friday. It's gorgeous, but the face is also, it's the living face. It's the face that was seen before. So this was also done by Durer, who, one of the earlier pictures I showed you, and he designed this and did this. So the face is the face he remembers. So this is how it is shown today. You can see it at a distance of 20 meters. This is Monsignor Ciani. He's one of the canons. Still today, only the canons can handle it. And there's a zoomed in picture. You wouldn't see it that close, but that's zoomed in. Now, I'm going to pause there for just a second because this is just on a personal note. When I was about between 9 and 10, I was about to make my confirmation. And because both of my grandmothers on both sides had the same name, it was Bernice, Veronica, the two names associated with the Holy Face. And so I wanted Veronica. I loved that station. I loved everything about this woman who does this compassionate act. So that was the name I had chosen. So we're talking, to the class, who was chosen what name and why. and mine was Veronica. So proud. Well, there's a girl in the class. There's always a girl. And she says, well, there isn't any Veronica because, she's not really a saint. And my parents went to Rome and we saw what was there. And she said, it's just a brown cloth. You can't see a face. And I thought, this really rocked my little boat when I was that young. I thought, wait a minute. If God made a miracle and I see all these beautiful pictures and Stations of the Cross, does that mean wait a minute, God wouldn't make a miracle that wouldn't last, that would degrade. So I could not reconcile this in my mind, but I still believed it was plausible. So, oops.
And moreover, it's offensive to pious ears when she says that, because we know that at least, even if Veronica is only a level 9 on the theological notes pious opinion, it's still, to deviate from that would be offensive to pious ears. So it's still binding on the faithful.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's binding on the faithful, but it truly disturbed me. But I had it gave me, I knew it was something plausible. It was believable. I could believe that this woman existed. The other thing was, I just had this desire, which just grew as I got through my teen years and, up until as old as I am, to see the Veronica. I wanted to see it myself. I wanted to see, and so I looked whenever there was something, an article or something, when the Shroud of Turin, when they were doing the studies on that back in the 70s, then the face on the Shroud of Turin became my, big devotion. I still love, this face. Who wouldn't? It represents Jesus. So, all these faces that are representing Jesus, all good. So, but I wanted to, this kind of drove my desire to know what's up with this. So in 1999, I read a story by it's Father Heinrich Pfeiffer. He was a Jesuit. He was the head of the Gregorian University at the Vatican. His specialty was art history. And he claimed in the article that he found the Veronica. And he talks about this little town in the mountains. Nobody can get to it. It's very inaccessible. And it was inaccessible, but now there's a highway and you can get there. And he had gone there at the request of a Trappistine nun who was there, who claimed that she had found something, a veil that matched those characteristics that, also forensically matched the Shroud of Turin. So he waits 8 years before he even goes to look. And this is the little mountain village of Manopello. And now we get to the story of Manopello. So Saccharum was 1527. So we're going to zoom ahead a little bit to 1638. So on the other side of Italy, down towards the Adriatic coast, a devout and well-respected man named Don Antonio Fabricius donated a precious veil bearing the face of Christ to the Capuchin monastery in the small, isolated mountain village of Manopello, Italy. And actually, they're celebrating this year the 400th anniversary of them taking custody of the veil. So this is the veil that is mentioned in Stefano Pedico's book that he calls an ancient devotion. He said there's already this ancient devotion. It's okay to have this devotion to the Holy Face as well. So, a document was written retelling the local legend of the veil that was written by the Capuchin Friar Donato da Bamba, and it was notarized in 1646, and then certified by 16 local witnesses, which seems like overkill, but they really wanted to make sure that it was certified, that this was all legal. So the story was told about the arrival of a veil in Manopello in around 1506. Now notice the date is actually before 1527, and it is also it's dated before the orders to send back your veil if you have one to Rome. So, and they did, so Urban VIII actually did send out kind of a correction on that later, because he didn't intend for all the older images of the true veil to be destroyed or brought in or underpainted. He only intended the copies that looked like the Speroni image, that dark face. So he was looking for images that did not look like the true image. He wanted those ones returned. He didn't want any, and no other copies were allowed to be made from that time on. So the story starts in around 1506. So the date is a little vague. In the hands of a mysterious stranger who was thought to have been a holy angel. So aside from the angel, the main characters in the story have been historically verified. The recorded story was this: there lived in Manopello a very famous Giacomo Antonio Leonelli, a doctor in medicine. One day he was out in the public square, just outside the door of the mother church of the town of Manopello, San Nicolas Bari, in an honest conversation with other peers, and while they were speaking, a pilgrim arrived, unknown by anyone, with a very venerable religious appearance, who, having greeted this beautiful circle of citizens, he said, I gotta move toward the light a little better, my eyes. Okay, he says that, in many terms of manners and of humility, to Dr. Giacomo Antonio Leonelli, that he has to speak with him about a secret thing, which would be very pleasing, useful, and beneficial for him. And thus, taking him aside inside the doorway of the church of San Nicolas Bari, he gave him a parcel without unfolding it, and told him that he ought to hold this devotion very dear, because God would grant him many favors, so that in things both temporal and spiritual, he would always prosper. So the doctor took the parcel, and turning towards the holy water fount, carefully opened it. And seeing the most sacred face of our Lord Jesus Christ, he burst into most tender tears, and thanking God for such a gift, he turned to the unknown pilgrim to thank him, but he did not see him anymore. When the good doctor, shaken and filled with wonder, went outside to his friends and asked where the man went, his friends replied that they never saw him leave the church. They searched high and low and never found the mysterious pilgrim again. Hence, all judged the man in the form of a pilgrim to be a heavenly angel, or else a saint from paradise. So the Holy Veil remained the property of the Leonelli family for nearly a century, until a family member in need of money sold the veil to Don Antonio Fabricius, who in turn gave it to the Capuchins in 1638. The Holy Veil, called Il Volto Santo, which means holy face, was kept in a dimly lit side chapel until the church was renovated in 1960. That's just the hills of Manopello. And this is the veil that was spoken of. Okay, so so when the church was renovated in 1960, they placed the relic. Until then, it had only been taken out on special feast days for a day. They only had 2 feast days a year. Now they have 3, including Omnis Terra, which was the same one that Innocent III did. So they celebrate that. So The other one is they celebrate the Feast of the Arrival of the Manopello in May, and also the Feast of the Transfiguration is a big feast there, which they just had on Friday. They shoot off fireworks and bands play, and plays are, singing and dancing and procession. So what did the face on the gossamer veil look like? Well, here is a portion of the description that Capuchin Donato da Bamba gave of the face. He has a rather long, well-proportioned face with a venerable and majestic look. His hair or locks are long with thin twisted curls, in particular at the top of the forehead. About 50 hairs wind into a little corkscrew distinctive from the other well-arranged. His left cheek is swollen and bigger than the other because of a strong blow to the cheek. The lips are very swollen. The teeth show. So you can see his mouth is partially opened, and you can actually see teeth. I have another better high definition picture that I can show you, the veil itself and the.
I never noticed the teeth.
I know, isn't it
Wow.
amazing? So sometimes on the veils that were painted, sometimes you see the mouth partially open, sometimes closed, more of the teeth or less of the teeth. Why the difference? You'll see. So his teeth, it seems that the holy face is made of living flesh, but the flesh that is afflicted, emaciated, sad, sorrowful, pale, and covered in bruises around the eyes and on the forehead. So there are faint traces of it on this picture, but it's stronger in other pictures. So the eyes of Christ are similar to those of a dove. He is serene and tranquil. Those who gaze on it are never satisfied with contemplating it and wish always to have it before their eyes. And when they eventually leave it with a heavy sighs full of love, they are forced to leave him, their hearts bathed in tears. And that's by Capuchin Donato da Bamba, 1646. On September 1st, 2006, another pilgrim, some may also call him an angelic pilgrim. Whoops, you don't want to see that. Came to, so here's the Manopello. Here's the last face that we saw painting representing the veil of Christ. So in September 1st, 2006, another angelic pilgrim came to Manopello to see for himself the holy veil of Jesus, the holy face of Jesus on the veil. Pope Benedict XVI, who elevated the status of the shrine to a sanctuary basilica, said on that occasion, "Your face, O Lord, I seek. Seeking the face of Jesus must be the longing of all Christians. Indeed, we are the generation which seeks his face in our day, the face of the God of Jacob. If we persevere in our quest for the face of God, at the end of our earthly pilgrimage, he, Jesus, will be our eternal joy, our reward and glory forever." And I just want to show you a few more pictures. Here he is before the veil. He had a few minutes to pray before the veil. Here's another. These are other cardinals and other cardinal. This is Cardinal Meisner, who passed away a few years ago. He was one of the dubious signers. This is, I think that's Cardinal Moeller, and I think that's the Cardinal of Switzerland, Cardinal Koch. And then there's Cardinal Moeller and Cardinal Seurat. This is Archbishop of San Francisco, Archbishop Cordileone. This is, I pointed out one of the canons that were holding up the veil in the picture from a distance. This is Monsignor Ciani. He was a canon that was up close and saw the Veronica that was there. And he believes that this veil is the proto image. So this is the image from which other images were made. So the veil, remember the description of Julian of Norwich. She said it was dark, light, bluish, black, or vanished completely. Here we have dark. You can see a window. This is looking through the veil. It is transparent. This picture, it is somewhat dark, but you can also see the wounds. And when I saw it in person the first time, I saw many of the wounds, and it's quite strong. I also saw it in a different way when I knelt down. When I was standing, this is how it looked, similar to how it looked. Now, this is a high definition image, and you can see this spot on the cheek. It's showing the opposite of the one I show you that Charlemagne commissioned. There's a distinctive spot shows up on one cheek, and here it is. There are different signs of blood. You can see where the beard was torn out. But if I zoom in, I'll zoom in here where it's light. You get an idea. Some people, I had somebody send me a message, and people have said it's just a bad painting. Well, I'd like to see somebody paint on this. So this is byssus. This is the fabric. And I want you to note, so you can also see, these are the folds. It has 4 vertical folds and 4 horizontal folds. So this is where it was folded and kept for almost 400 years, about just under 300, something like that, in a dark tabernacle. It was locked up in Manopello, so it was mostly folded up and kept there. You can see the detail of the eyes.
We always see these kind of things, like Our Lady of Guadalupe and everything.
It's exactly, it was what comes to mind. So this would be an Arcarapoida, like the Shroud of Turin, like Our Lady of Guadalupe. This is not made by human hands. However it was made, it is by the hand of God, and only by the hand of God. I think some of the confusion is that many things, especially with icons, they would entitle it not made by human hand. Well, that's not the proto image, but it still has the same title, like we would say in the West, the Veronica. The Veronica is the proto image, but yes, it's all these other images too. So it is also, so it's dark, it is also light. That one's beautiful. That one's also, you see now notice the mouth is more or less open. This one's a little more open. This one's a little more closed. This one, if we look at the teeth, can you see? It's just, you can see just kind of glistening on the teeth right there. And the mouth was, was swollen. Think of him falling on his face. The face was swollen, but you see this face, and it's believed to be in the Sudarium from the resurrection. But it was like, you see it with wounds, and you see it in the process of healing. This shows, you can see the transparency here. You could read a newspaper through this veil. It is byssus, byssus was, because it was so expensive and precious, and it had all these beautiful attributes. It was luminous, it was light, gossamer thin, it shimmered. It was fit for a priest, a king, and God. So they used this they used byssus in the temple, in the priest's garments. They used it to, I guess, what do I want to say? In the curtain temple, not the whole temple, but to, decoration or whatever it is, because it shimmered. So this is bluish and golden. So it has all the characteristics. This is actually, it looks kind of strange, but it's with a flashlight. So you see it according to the light as it exists. And, remember back when people were first seeing it, you wouldn't have seen it only by natural light or candlelight, because, but now you can see it with electric light. So it has they can make a consistent image so we can see it well enough. But then it would be, and when I saw it kneeling, it looks like looking into a mirror, but instead of seeing your own face, you're seeing the face of Jesus, like a living face looking at you. It's true. So this one reminds me of the Transfiguration. This is the hand of, I think it's Cardinal Koch behind it. You can see how transparent it is. And it disappears completely. So Martin Luther was right. There's nothing there that he could see. But one of the sisters there, and this is interesting to me. This has got to be, this is just, so we have Sister Marie St. Pierre, which is like Mary St. Peter, right? We have another nun that comes after her, Mother Pierina de Micheli, Mary Pierina. That's, so we have Marie St. Pierre, Marie Pierina is Italian. Pierina is Italian for Peter. Mary Peter, and guess who the nun who greets pilgrims at the shrine is? And I had to tell her this. She was not aware of this. Her name is Sister Petra Maria. Petra is Peter. Mary. I said, do you know this? She speaks many languages, so she was explaining many things to me in the museums. They have a wonderful museum there with all kinds of research that was done by Sister Blandina Pascala Schlomer. She's the Trappistine nun, and I'll show you some of her, just a couple of her research in a minute. So the first time I went to Manopello, I did not take any pictures. I was just strictly there to pray. And wow, it was one heck of an experience of prayer. But I knew three things. It was a gift from God. This is a great gift from God for us. This is his merciful face. Jesus is merciful. I experienced that mercy, and I experienced a profound, deep peace that I've never experienced in this world. And I don't think I'll, may not experience again until, one day, God willing, I can be in heaven, I hope. So this one was taken the second time I went. There were lots of pilgrims there because it was the Feast of Transfiguration. This was in 2016. So I didn't feel so bad. I was almost alone when I was there the first time. My husband was way back, he didn't go in. There was the nun praying in the choir, and the rector was in his office. Nobody else was there. I was the only one that went up and looked and prayed. And it was quite a blessing. So, but the next time, people were everywhere, and they do take the reliquary out in procession. And so lots of people are taking pictures. So I didn't feel bad. This is another beautiful one. So this is the rector of the shrine, Venerable Padre Domenico. He's a Capuchin, and he was rector for many years. He was the one who said, and he prayed before the image constantly. He said, it is the sudarium of the resurrection. So that is what he told people. And he was actually killed when he went to present, I think it was 1978, when he went to present a paper on the Manopello at a conference in Turin. He was going to view the Shroud of Turin, and it was being displayed, and go to this conference. And that's when he was killed. He was a friend of Padre Pio, and there's a whole story with him and Padre Pio concerning the Holy Face. This is back to the original image I wanted to show you of the Edessa, because this is the Edessa in the Vatican. We see this black and white. This is what it looks like. That's the one that's in the Vatican. And Sister Blandina, part of the work she was doing, she's an iconographer. So she would measure things, very precise measurements. And she noticed that the Shroud of Turin, forensically matched. So then she started trying it on other historic images. So she tried it on the Edessa. This is what she sees. So I'd say that's a pretty good match. This is on a different image of the Edessa. So she tried it on that. Another very good match. So she tried it on the Shroud of Turin, of course, placing a transparent transparency. You got to line it up just so, but it just doesn't happen on the human face that it would line up so perfectly. So it's showing them side by side. You can maybe see some things, details that correspond. And they do say you can see the open mouth of Jesus and teeth on the Shroud of Turin, which I never even realized before, but you can. So this is the image overlaid on the Shroud of Turin. And they have a huge display in Manopello where you can do that. That's probably, this big, that you slide the panels with transparency so you can really see the detail and you can line them up together. But there's the third image, and that's the Shroud of Oviedo, which is the blood that soaked up his face when that soaked up the blood when he was taken down from the cross. The Shroud of Oviedo transparency, and I don't have a picture of that going over this. Holy cow, it took my breath away. I just went, oh my gosh, because those were on the Oviedo where you saw those red patches where his nose and where his mouth is and other areas, it's perfect. It matches up to a T. So we're back to the drawings of the Veronica veil from the Epiphany miracle. And I want to see if I had something else I wanted to show you real quick, because I'm almost done, but I'll linger here for a minute. So just wanted to hang on one sec. I'm so bad. Okay. So I just wanted to say a few things in conclusion. You're probably thinking, what does all this mean? I can't keep track of all these things. It's a little overwhelming. So I want to say that, like you and probably anybody viewing, I still have many unresolved questions, and they grow every day, the questions, but I'm also learning more every day. And I hope, that some of these mysteries one day will be, we'll understand them. But so on the one hand, I can see the historic evidence for the veil of Manopello being the proto-image. It is a miracle of light and a gift from God. On the other hand, I believe that the image of the Vatican, though brown and degraded, is also a miracle of light that became visible in the octave of the Epiphany in 1849. Leo XIII stated in his documents regarding the Archconfraternity and the subsequent documents that all images, ancient and new, portray the suffering face of Jesus are worthy of latria. They bring before us the whole sacred humanity of Jesus. We may gaze at his face to adore, to contemplate, compassionate, to make reparation, and above all, to love God and neighbor.
Right. The face is due latria, not the cloth itself.
Right.
Yeah.
So in order that he can transform our souls, then we will become Veronica. We will bear his image. And that's all I wanted to say. And if you have any questions or anything you want to ask me.
Oh, that's great. We'll have to do it again, because now I'll have to watch this a whole bunch of times, jot down all the questions, and then get back to you with all
Well,
the,
and if you,
it's a lot.
then there's more to it, but I have to, there's so much more. My problem is keeping things down,
Oh,
because
you did a great job,
there's
because
a
I can
lot.
see as we're going through those slides, you have it in your eyes. It's like there's another point there. There's another story. I know you truncated it. That was really good.
So, well, yeah, thank you for letting me talk about it, because my heart just explodes when it comes to the Holy Face. I just, it's something, I'm an introvert, believe it or not. I'm a terrible introvert. So I was very happy to be up in the corner of the screen. I don't want anybody looking at me. So, but at the same time, God gave me this. When I first went and was in prayer before him, I felt like Mary Magdalene did. I have seen the Lord. I want to tell people, it's like, but who's going to listen to me? So it took me a couple years even to make the blog. So finally, that was my outlet. I thought, well, I can write about the Holy Face and all aspects of the Holy Face, about prayer in the Holy Face, about love of God and neighbor, and just all those aspects, different faces, that I might write about that are out there. It's not just the Manopello, but or the Shroud of Turin, or, and there's so much written on the Shroud of Turin, even though I, love it. It is this archaea poeta, but there's so much already out there that, I'll leave that to, all those Sindone experts, that's a whole branch of science, and it's huge. So there are more people who can talk about that. So
that's great. That was again loaded with information. People want this. This devotion is really ready to pop now. You could see different communities growing, and now we're just trying to bring it all together. All these different Holy Face devotions, right? Whether it's the Shroud or Month.
Well, that's my point. Is and that was Leo the 13th too. It doesn't matter if it's ancient or not. My 4-year-old grandchild did a beautiful picture of the face of Jesus that a 4-year-old in 4-year-old style, and with the tears and it's like, that's the face of Jesus to me just as much as any of these, as long as they're moving your heart to turn to his face, to contemplate him. So there's a whole lot more to this, but it's not a narrow devotion. It's not just a matter of you're saying the prescribed prayers and that's it. It's living a life of devotion to the Holy Face. So that's a big thing. So there's a lot more to it.
Right. And as you said, that when as people, when we see someone's face, that's what really comes into our head. If you think about, your family, your friends, whoever, their face pops in your head.
Right. You're seeing Jesus in them. And the more you get into the devotion, the more you will, that's what Mother Teresa, she also had this devotion to the Holy Face. Hers was a different face, but it was the last face she saw when she died, Jesus with the crown of thorns. And it was just this little black and white picture of the face of Jesus, but it was to seek the face of God everywhere in the distressing disguise of the poor. So you begin to see him everywhere, and you see him in Jesus in his face in the scriptures, right? In the word of God, you see his face. And this is what Pope Benedict said, and let me get something just real quick if I can find it. Yeah, there you go. So he said so John Paul II dedicated the millennium to the Holy Face, right?
Oh, wow.
And that's a big deal. He said, and this is another thing. he said, so he studied the Holy Face medal of Sister Marie Perina Micheli, and he asked Joseph Ratzinger to head a commission studying devotion of the Holy Face and what makes up this devotion. And he said, one thing he said, I want to mention real quick. He said, in contemplating Jesus' face, we cannot stop at the crucifixion. It's very interesting. He says, I'll go back. Here's what Padre Domenico said. He said, he is the risen one, that this veil happened at the resurrection. He is the risen one. So this miracle of light, this gift from God, is the same. It's Christ's face. Is it shown in the transfiguration that was taken on the day of the transfiguration? And this is to give us the strength. If you think about it, what the transfiguration was all about, this was to give us, showing us the glory, this pointing to the glory of his face at Easter, is also giving us the strength to, as Christians, to face our cross, carry our cross. So he's saying so much to us in this devotion, but this is, there's some beautiful prayers by John Paul II to the Holy Face. He wrote so much, but Pope Benedict wrote even more. And he says, he gives us what are the components of devotion to the Holy Face. So it is basically three things. Well, you could say four, but why can't I find anything when I'm talking to you? I can't find it at the same time. So it's basically in his images, especially of Jesus, images of Jesus in his passion, and contemplating those and praying with those. It is in his Eucharistic face, above all in his Eucharistic face, because that's woven between these other components. And the other one is in discipleship. So this is where it's the love of God, the love of neighbor, right? So it's these, basically these three things. So in his images, the Eucharist, discipleship, and just want to find one more thing. Let's see if sorry, I'm leaving you.
Oh, it's good.
Nope, as usual. I have things you wouldn't believe, all the stuff I have, and it's everywhere. So I've got things spread out all over everywhere, but I'll have to let it go. So, but I hope that David said you hadn't heard of it before, or
right,
knew about it, or did he talk to you a little bit beforehand?
He briefs me about all of it. So he was explaining it, and he said to hear from you. It's great. You know, he's a guy, he gets things right away. Me, I'm a
good
guy.
He's amazing.
You know, I'm a grinder. I'm a guy who needs to, so I'm gonna have to watch this about a dozen times, and then it'll sink in.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's taken me my whole lifetime. So God works out, it takes me a long time. He knows I'm slow. You know, God knows I'm slow. I'm a turtle. So.
But that's it. Oh, great stuff. Thank you very much, Pat. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. And thank you so much for asking me to do this. So.
Absolutely. Have a great night. We'll be in touch. God bless you.
Could we say a little blessing?
Yes.
So this is the old, do you know the oldest blessing in the Bible?
Yeah, I bless my kids with that every night. I said the
do
word.
You really?
The Aaronic blessing, the word blessing.
So the Aaronic, the priestly blessing. So may the Lord bless and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you and be merciful to you. May the Lord turn his countenance toward you and grant you his peace.
Right.
So,
And now I emphasize that point when I say it to my kids, I say, the Lord make his face shine upon you. Yeah. It takes on a totally different meaning now. And even when my boys, I have two kids, one's 2.5, the other one's 1. And the one who's 2.5, he could understand where I say, Gene, kiss Jesus's face, kiss his face, instead of just kissing the legs. I say, kiss his face.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, teach them young, because they're so open to this devotion. I mean, babies will do that. My little grandchildren, I've got lots and lots of them. You know, one of them was over. I mean, she's barely, she's not even 2. She won't be 2 till, when's her birthday? Next January. She's about 1.5 years too. But I mean, she's already Jesus, Jesus, you know, and they'll, you know, it's, God puts that longing in our hearts. He made us that way. So it's already there. We just have to cultivate it. So
that's
good job, Dad.
Yes. Thank you so much, Pat. God bless you. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bless you too. I'll say good night now. Thanks so much.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.